You know my story, but I'm sure when you first met me, the people who first come across me probably think, wow, look at this badass. She's so lucky. And you don't know the backstory and the grit and the tenacity and the crap I put up with and what I did to get to where I am today. I didn't just leave my corporate job. I hustled around my 9 to 5. I got up at 4 a.m. and I went to bed at midnight.
Hello, Melissa.
Hi.
How are you?
I'm good. Happy to be here.
Yes, I'm glad you agreed. Thank you. I'm so excited to have you on the Break Time with Patty show. Dear friend, let me tell you how our paths crossed. I was talking with my good friend Claudine Hilaire, and she found out that I wasn't on the LinkedIn platform. She said, "What? You're not on LinkedIn?" I go, "No, I'm not looking for a job. I don't need to be on LinkedIn." She goes, "You need to get on that platform immediately, and you need to follow Melissa Henault immediately, and you need to jump on one of her courses. She is a legend. She is a legend."
Aww.
She was so insistent that, I listened to her because she's a very wise lady. I created a LinkedIn profile that same day, just a few months ago. And obviously, Melissa immediately connected with me because that's what she does. She's that awesome. Without delay, let me introduce Dr. Melissa Henault to you. First things first. Melissa is a business leader. She refers to herself as a corporate dropout. Previously a doctor in the pharmaceutical industry, she is now the president and CEO of Henault Healthy Horizons, LLC, since 2018. She's the founder of the LinkedIn Method Academy, which is a coaching program for online business owners who are ready to ditch the crash and burn cycle of Facebook ads and attract thousands of leads on LinkedIn. She created the Burnout to All Out Leadership Mastermind community, where individuals can break through their plateau in social selling business by up-leveling their tribe, improving their business acumen, and removing their self-limiting beliefs around money. She has built a network / army of 4,500 humans, approximately. Number 2, Melissa is a master communicator. She is a public speaker and a trainer. She teaches everyday entrepreneurs how to increase their income and monetize their life. Cha-ching, cha-ching. She is also the host of the Burnout to All Out podcast, which is phenomenal. You need to go subscribe and listen to her amazing messages. Number 3, and finally, and most importantly, Melissa is a wife and the mother of 3 dragons. Woo! I've talked enough. Let's get started. Can you tell us a little bit more about young Melissa and what was it like to be in her shoes growing up as a child and a teenager, please?
Yeah, sure. Gosh, as a young child, I think back to my childhood. I mean, to sum it up for you, I'm the product of a single mom who went through 2 divorces before I was 13. And alcoholic father and a mentally ill sister. So, I think everybody has, their trials and tribulations growing up, but I actually, my story has become my blessing because my experience has really, created the human that I am today. Right. So yeah, I mean, I was the product of a mom who really was working 3 jobs trying to make ends meet and had to pull us out of some really unsafe situations in order to survive. What's interesting, though, that you may or may not know, is that even though my mom never went to college, she came from a father who was a really successful entrepreneur. And so what she did have was a safety net of retreating back home. And this is where I talk about my imposter syndrome of, like, at the age of 13, leaving a very dilapidated home with one of the bathroom floors falling in. My mom walked out and was just like, I cannot live in this house with my child anymore. My oldest sister was already gone. And so, but what do? We moved to her mom's house, which was a 7,000 square foot home with a runway in the neighborhood where everybody had their own private plane. And so what's interesting about that story is that I knew that people could be really successful even though I lived for 13 years in a place of impoverishment and scarcity mindset where money was never really available, I also knew that people like my grandfather had really succeeded in life, along with a couple of uncles in my family who were all entrepreneurs. And so I lived kind of the second half of that teenage years between 13 and 18. I was a really shy, insecure person who felt like I was an imposter. I was living in the basement of a 7,000 square foot house that I felt like we didn't deserve to live in, and everyone knew. Right. And so I never felt like I really fit in, because I felt like we were just, we weren't in a neighborhood because we had earned it, if that makes sense. But what it did is it showed me what was possible. And I will say that my grandmother, who lived in the house with me a lot when my mom was working, my grandmother was a huge influence in my life. And I actually talked about this yesterday on my own little Facebook Live, but I used to watch her because we lived in the basement and the pool was on the bottom floor. And every morning I'd see her every morning. And she was divorced as well. My grandfather, they divorced later in life. But she would get in the pool and she would swim laps, and I would see her, in her 50s. She'd do pull-ups on the diving board, and then she'd go upstairs and she'd spend an hour with her Bible every day, like every day. And I think about her routine, and I look at myself now at 41, and I do my cold plunge every morning. I meditate. I think about the influence 40 years later she's had on me. Right. And it's pretty interesting. So yeah, that's a little bit about my childhood. But the last thing I have to say about my grandmother is she got her pilot's license. Who did that back then? Like, she got her pilot's license in the 70s, had 5 kids and flew them herself to the beach, got lost over the ocean and had to have another pilot come up. But like, that's the kind of woman she was. So I think between her and my mother, they were just powerful forces that impacted me tremendously.
Wow. I love your grandmother, by the way. And your mama. Yes, so much of what you just said resonated with me, because I'm surrounded by strong women, my aunts, my mom, and it does influence us. And maybe not necessarily when we're younger, but definitely later in life. So thank you for sharing. Yeah. And which brings me to my next question, basically. So at this point, you're a young lady, and how can you share with us the journey from being that young woman to being a doctor of pharmacy? Like, why did you choose that field?
Yeah, well, actually, it was pretty strategic. Initially, I was pre-medicine, and I was dating a guy in medical school, and we got to know a couple of couples who were in medical school together. And I saw the turmoil of the residency lottery selection, and basically started doing the math in my head about the number of years I was going to be in school if I went to medical school on top of residency. And then how, if I married this guy, we would probably be living in different places for a very long time, just the way the lottery slots work and all those things. And I decided, and I was already studying for medical school, or the MCAT. And I was like, you know what? This whole pharmacy thing seems pretty interesting and more flexible. I've always been really interested in business. And oddly enough, this guy's father was in the pharmacy industry. And so I got this exposure to it. And his brother worked in the pharmaceutical industry. And actually what made me pivot, no one's ever asked me this question, but this particular pharmacy school had a master's in clinical research and a doctorate in pharmacy with a program to kind of accelerate you in the pharmaceutical industry. Mm-hmm. And so I actually went into pharmacy school, never with the intention to do, white coat pharmacy, but to actually leverage my doctorate to give me more, leverage in the pharmaceutical industry because of my degree and background in business.
Mm-hmm. Fascinating. Oh my God, I love your life. This is exciting stuff. So, okay, at this point, you're a pharmaceutical corporate executive, you're living the life. And so how did you go from being a corporate executive to being a corporate dropout? Like, what was the turning point for you at this point then?
Yeah, it was a pretty pivotal moment in my life. 2 things happened. I was going through a second level leadership training. They were grooming me to become a VP. And one of the things we had to do in that program was write out a mission statement. And I can't like recite it word for word, but the mission statement I wrote was to lead by example. As a leader, and to be an example to others that you could live a healthy life and be present in your home life and still be wildly successful in your career. And as I continued on my journey and climbed Mount Everest and got to the top and looked around, I realized I'd climbed the wrong mountain, first of all. But secondly, the reason I realized I climbed the wrong mountain was that I wasn't living out the mission that I set out for. I wanted to be the example. And what I found was that at the age of 32, 33, I was in a leadership position where I was gone. I covered half the country. I was on an airplane. I had a really shiny title. I was a medical science liaison director. People in the pharmaceutical industry would drool over that type of role. I had great benefits. I was paid very well. I never saw my husband. We passed each other in the night because he was growing in his leadership role at his company too. My mother was raising our kids. I was barely sleeping because I worked, like I would put the kids to bed and I would work if I was home. I was working in a hotel if I was in a hotel. My health was slipping. And I realized I was always passionate about leading and developing other people, but my platform was wrong. And I was not living out my mission of being the example anymore because I was unhealthy. And I knew if I continued on this track, I might end up in a divorce, or my children, I was missing milestones with my kids, and something had to be done. And so that was kind of the pivotal moment for me to assess what are my options and how do I match this income and get out of it.
Wow. Okay. So, well, let me just ask you about, this is amazing. So, because you took a huge risk. A lot of people, well, I don't need to tell you this, but a lot of people are just so terrified of the unknown. They just they prefer to just stay in their life that makes them miserable, or their mediocre life, just because they don't want to step out because they don't know what's out there, right? Mm-hmm. So I would like to just ask you at this point, you're the founder of the LinkedIn Method Academy.
Yep.
And I'd like to ask you actually 2 questions related to that. Can you tell us a little bit more about that? And
sure. Yeah. So, when I was on my journey of finding new ways to generate revenue and get out of corporate, I actually launched an e-commerce business and in the pockets of my time around my 9 to 5. So I didn't just leave corporate, and I don't recommend most people do that unless they have a really sound financial plan for that. I actually came up with an actual number of monthly revenue I needed to be bringing in before I could afford to quit my job, right? So I started an e-commerce business and very quickly found that there were so many other working professionals like me on LinkedIn who needed the business and the e-commerce business that I had to offer. It was a health and wellness company. And I pivoted from where most social sellers were on the other platforms. I started recruiting over on LinkedIn, and it skyrocketed and my business exploded. I became one of the top income earners in that company. It was a direct sales company, and it retired me from corporate. I matched my corporate income, and I realized at that moment that if a couple of things. I realized, number one, if this methodology works for me, who else can it work for? It doesn't matter what your end product, service, or good is. I teach an attraction marketing method on an underutilized platform that most people don't use. And also, I wanted to fulfill my own personal mission of really, how can I help more burnouts live all out? Going back to that being an example, right? And so I launched, while I still have my other e-commerce business going, I launched an academy teaching others the methodology of how to recruit high ticket clients, how to recruit business partnerships, really, you name it, the methodology works using the power of LinkedIn.
Yes, I'm just getting started on it, but I'm definitely, because I'm one of those who said, well, I don't need to be there because I'm not looking for a job. But it's so, anyway, I'll encourage you strongly to go do one of her workshops or to check out her academy, because it's phenomenal. And that's the next thing. That's my next plan actually in life. Okay. So awesome. If one of our viewers right now is burnt out, miserable at their job. They're sick and tired of being sick and tired, and they don't see a way out of their current circumstances. What would you like to tell them, Melissa?
Oh, if they don't see a way out of their current circumstances, this is a tough one because so many people in our world have accepted the fact that it is what it is, right? There's so many people just shuffling around like a miserable cow standing in the rain. Like if you were to drive past the highway, you know, when it's pouring down rain and there's just a field of cows that are just standing there, right? And I think that the first step is, like, I say this all the time, that what you focus on, you find. And so if you're telling yourself there's no way out, there will be no way out. There won't. And so, if you're looking for me to tell you like the hack to get out, it's to get out of your own way, because mindset, my friends, is everything. And once I learned that and launched my first business, I realized I could do this again. So I launched another one. And then I was like, I could do this again. So I launched another one. And so you build the muscle and the tenacity. I could lose everything today and I have 100% confidence. I could go start another business now, right? I say that now with confidence. And for myself, 6 or 7 years ago, I know I was terrified, which is why I would say that it starts with believing, but it also starts with taking action, even if it's just the littlest bit. So no, I didn't just leave corporate. And to some people, even maybe, you know, my story, but I'm sure when you first met me, the people who first come across me probably think, wow, look at this badass. She's so lucky. And you don't know the backstory and the grit and the tenacity and the crap I put up with and what I did to get to where I am today. I didn't just leave my corporate job. I hustled around my 9 to 5. I got up at 4 a.m. and I went to bed at midnight to start building my dream. That took me 2 years to create enough income to actually quit. And when I quit, I was terrified, but I did it anyway. The last thing I'll say on this is that we have to breathe and trust through faith. And what I'll say about that is we have our primitive brain is fear. Our primitive brain is trying to keep us from being disappointed. The primitive brain is telling you not to take action on your dreams for fear of failure, but it's simply fear. And if we can fear and feel and anticipate failure, my friends, we can actually do the exact same thing, but have faith and feel and see the future of success. And if we can harness that and focus on it, I promise you, you can find it. Everything is figure outable.
Yes. Like you started preaching. Amen. Absolutely. Because I'm a woman of faith too, but definitely when we surrender to God or whatever you want to call it, that higher power, and you open up your mind to tools. There's so many tools out there. We just have to be available. And then literally we can make anything happen. The resources are vast. And
I will tell you right now, the evolution in my faith is what exploded my business. And I, this is no knock on people who are atheists, but my comment here is when you have faith that some higher being has your back, you can do anything. This book right here changed my life. It's called The Circle Maker. It is so good. And it's about God-sized, audacious dreams, and that God wants you to have dreams and goals so freaking big that when you achieve them, there is no other way that you can attribute the success than to his contribution and give him the glory. Yes. And when you do that, you are a voice for him.
Yes. Oh, I could not have said it better myself. Yes. Yes. Oh, so that's wonderful. So you're such a busy woman. I can't even begin to imagine how busy you are. You're running an empire, literally. But you also have a family, which is a huge empire to take care of as well. So can you share with us, you've already mentioned quickly, but what are your daily practices you use in order to keep your mental sanity? get your mindset right, and accomplish all the things that you have to do on a daily basis within 24 hours? Please do share.
What a great question. Yeah, my life is actually pretty boring. I go to bed before most people. I am lights out. My oldest and I always read and have tea together at night between 8:30 and 9, and I'm in bed. I'm asleep by 9. I get up at 5 a.m. every morning, solely to spend time with myself. So I drink a cup of lemon cider water. And while my coffee is brewing, I hydrate myself, and then I sit down and I journal, even if it's for like 2 minutes. I journal, I read. This is when I work on my personal development. I read in the morning and I read in the evening. In the morning, I read things that are business focused, that are upping my game. So like right now, I'm reading Creative Strategy Generation in the morning. In the evening, I read something a little more fun and woo-woo, like I'm reading about the history of breath and breath work, right? And then still, it's not even 6 o'clock. I put my gym clothes on, and I either, depending on the day, I do yoga or I run. I'm training for a half marathon right now. And then I'm done when the kids are waking up. See them out the door, and then I do a cold plunge, and then I spend 30 minutes in the hot tub outside. So the cold plunge is outside, the hot tub is outside. It's where I talk to God. I set my intention for the day, and I come in and I shower. I actually don't take any calls until at least 9 or 10 o'clock, believe it or not. Wow. On the outside, I look really busy, and I am, but I also have an amazing team that manages a lot of it.
Yes. Yes, you do. They're amazing. Amanda, Blighty. Woo! Yes. Oh, that's amazing. We have so many things in common that we do, but definitely just giving that time to yourself, to your family, to your priorities, to God is just wonderful. That's the way to go. Because then you start your day on a high, and no matter how crappy it may be, you're already on a high. If you would have started on a low, then you just go into the minus zeros, in the negative.
My cup is full, right? Like I was thinking about it this morning. It was 9 o'clock. And I'd already journaled, I'd already read, I was totally hydrated. I ran 6 miles. I did arms. I did a cold plunge. I sat in the hot tub and took a shower. And like, some people think it's crazy to get up at 5 a.m., but I'm actually more energized at 9 because I made time for that. And because I'm militant about going to bed at 9. I learned when I launched my first e-commerce business, because the only way I could do it was to find crevices of time that I could carve out from something else, AKA Netflix, social media scrolling, right? And so I learned 7 years ago to just stop watching TV at night and go to bed, because nothing good happens after 9 p.m. Just be rejuvenated and get up early, right? So that's been kind of my religion for... I'll watch movies on like Friday and Saturday night. So I told you my life's really boring.
No, it's not boring at all, because you're changing lives, literally. But I know what you mean. Definitely. And that's exactly what happened, because I launched my 2 YouTube channels and my whole Patty Pass journey. And the reason why I have because it takes me hours, like one video takes me forever, but it works because I don't spend hours. I used to spend 3 to 4 to 5 hours per evening just binge watching Netflix before, right? But now all that time has been liberated to do exactly everything that I want to do. So yeah, great. So you host your own podcast called Burnout to All Out, as we said before. What made you decide to start that adventure, and what is it that you want to accomplish with that podcast? And also, yes.
Yeah, no, go ahead.
And also, you mentioned that you used to be terrified of public speaking, because I'm a firm believer in Toastmasters and what it does to change lives. But the thing is, what gave you that confidence basically to start speaking so much also?
Yeah. Oh my gosh. So many good questions. So I'll start with the podcast, and then we can talk about the public speaking. So with the podcast, it was when I decided I had grown my e-commerce business. I had gotten out of corporate, and through that e-commerce business, I'd actually retired other people because they joined me in the business. And I realized the lives that were the quality of life, of change, of people who could really lean into entrepreneurship and still work, but work for themselves. I realized I could impact and change more lives if I launched a business that served more than just people who were financially tied to me in my e-commerce business, right? And so And I knew that I could take my leadership skills and business management skills from the internet and from my history in corporate and help lead and inspire and coach more. And where I go with that is I take you back to my original mission that I wrote when I was in corporate, which was to actually live by example. And that is what birthed the brand name Burnout to All Out. I had gone from a burnout state to now living a life I never dreamed of, living all out. And now I wanted to truly make it my life's mission to impact as many other people's lives that I could to live all out. And so that birthed my podcast. My overall brand is Burnout to All Out, but also my podcast, because in my podcast, I share all the tips and tricks and disasters of entrepreneurship. And I interview other entrepreneurs who've broken free from their 9-to-5. And my goal, and they're from all walks of life. And my goal is really to inspire more people to take that leap of faith, and bet on themselves and launch their business.
Oh, yes. Well, and you're accomplishing exactly that. So that's wonderful. So you used to struggle with public speaking. So what shifted for you? At what point in your life?
Yeah, it's a good question. Well, if you think about it, like my childhood was fairly traumatic. And my mom said, she remembers in second grade, the teacher said that I was very quiet. And sometimes they thought that I was like not paying attention or just a very quiet, reserved person. Now I've done enough self-work and inner work to learn about like trauma and how it impacts you as a child and as an adult. And I truly think that, I was just internalizing a lot of trauma, but then also just really insecure in my environment and insecure in who I was, even as an early teenager, feeling an imposter. My mom couldn't put enough money together. She didn't have $30 to buy my basketball jersey, right? Like for my select basketball team, my traveling team that I was on. Yet my girlfriends that I was playing basketball with lived in these, multi-million-dollar homes. And so I think there was this huge lack of self-confidence when I was younger, because I felt like I didn't deserve, right? Like there was just this like lack of self-worth. But my mother always told me I was capable of anything. And, I lived with my grandmother who had done so much in her life, and I was surrounded by people who had, but there was still this like level of insecurity, and something just started to click when I think about it. I never actually said this out loud, but it was almost like getting out of that environment and going off to college and kind of getting away from the identity I had. I started to evolve and become a more outspoken person and become kind of the funny person. And, that evolved through pharmacy school and even into my corporate career. One of the things we haven't talked about, but like the two ways I was able to, as a child and teenager, to really, two things that were kind of habits I think back on now. One was a way to, when you have such a disruptive, sibling. My sister, literally at the age of 13, was hospitalized multiple times, severe bipolar disorder, just totally disrupting the house. My mother was always in tears, always stressed out about her. And there was 4 children in the house. We were a blended family. And so the only way that I felt like I could be seen or would feel loved was to perform. So the way I got loved was to be the athlete on the field, because I would get one-on-one time with my stepfather, who loved sports, right? He'd be out there playing. That was my way of escaping, was to be the performer, to make the really good grades, so that my mom is sobbing in the corner about my sister, but she has something great to talk about with me, right? And so unfortunately or fortunately, those are trauma bonds that you inherit and you adapt. And I ran with that all the way through college and throughout my career. And even to this day, I'm constantly having to peel back. I don't need to do all of this, right? And the same thing with money, right? Money was scarce. So I kind of came up with this like scarcity, money mindset, growing up, but even though I knew it was possible. So all of that to say, by the time I got to my corporate career, I still had some love. That little girl, insecure girl, was still here. I had this ironclad facade, right? But down below, this little girl who was insecure, money's not safe, you're not safe, you're not heard, no one cares about you, right? Just be quiet. You know, that still shows up in your corporate life. Well, the way I'll get loved and the way I'll succeed is I'll just be the best, do the best, work the hardest, make the most money. Then I don't have to depend on anyone, and I'll be seen, heard, and loved because I'm doing such a good job, right? And so that was a lot of, there's a lot there, but the bottom line is when I first started in corporate and I had to speak on stage, I would literally get short of breath, could not catch my breath. And this was an issue for a good year or two where I literally would anticipate it and would almost have like anxiety attacks over it. Because of that little girl that's like, you're not worthy. What I learned was it was survival. Like to keep my job, I was going to have to be on, you know, in front of hundreds of people and hold a microphone. And I overcame through practice over and over and over and over again until I got comfortable with being uncomfortable. Yes. Because it never went away. It still doesn't. I had a big webinar today for an hour and a half. I was still nervous as all get out before I had to be on screen, right? But I'm comfortable with the uncomfortableness now. I'm resilient.
You just summarized Toastmasters in like those few little sentences. Thank you. Practice, practice, practice until you become comfortable with being uncomfortable. I love it. Take notes, take notes. Okay. Okay, it may sound like a silly question because we're about to wrap it up here. Do you ever miss any aspects of your old life, Melissa? Is there anything in there that you say, I sort of missed that? And then you come back to your senses. Does that ever happen to you?
I would say that the only thing I miss about my corporate life is the human connection in the office. You know, like I am unemployable. I will sell my house and live in a tent before I ever work for anyone ever again. But having said that, being an online entrepreneur can be pretty isolating. And even, you know, we're here connecting on the screen, but there's something just to like sit down and have coffee with someone, right? And that's one of the reasons, you know, I joined 2 masterminds last year. I launched my own mastermind that I run, is because it can be a really lonely space as an online digital CEO. And so having like authentic life, like real connect, like belly to belly, we call it, relationships. I finally found a woman here in my community who's also an online entrepreneur, and we meet for coffee every now and again. But I think that's the biggest thing is like the water cooler chat, you know, like just the non-virtual, although one would argue most people are in a virtual space right now anyway.
Yes. Okay. Thank you for this. Oh, what is the next step for Melissa Henault? Please share.
Oh my gosh, that's a good question because I have this idea, but then I'm getting feedback in a different way. So what I mean is this year for me is all about clearing path and creating space. You know, like I said earlier, you know, I'm one that came into entrepreneurship from corporate, believing that you've got to be and do and be on all the time. Like if your calendar's not full, like you're not productive enough, right? And it's a constant process. And I recently just invested in this new mastermind, and I've asked the coach to really hold me accountable to this, that I'm continuing to peel back what's not necessary and what's not as important and serving to me to create more space for things like my cold plunge and the 30 minutes in the hot tub in the morning, right? And so like one of the things I identified a couple of weeks ago was, you know, I'm not really aligned with doing e-commerce anymore. I'm not really aligned with running a business that has me finding like is still a 1099 with another corporation that can basically decide if I get paid or not. And it's distracting me. And I really want to focus on just my business. And although it was a tough decision, the moment I came to that realization and totally just blessed it and released it, this like tremendous amount of weight just came off my shoulders. And I can't tell you how clear my path has been since then. My mind is clear. I'm less distracted. I'm more focused. I'm taking better care of myself. And what will happen there? So here's my thing. This is where I said I'm getting like my vision was creating a clear path and creating ease and flow. my mindset coach and energetic coach, we were talking yesterday, and she has this vision of this being one of the boldest, most audacious years of my life. And what's funny about that is that's not what I was asking the universe for. I was just asking the universe for being intentional about clearing a path and creating space. But my energetic coach is like, but that is when you get in your zone, and that's when you get creative, and that's when you make quantum leaps in your business. So, as far as my business goes, my goal this year is just to fine tune what we launched last year, and create space and give more to it and give less to the things that don't matter.
Wow. Yes, I'm with you there. So finally, if someone in the audience would like to get in touch with you or join your team or follow one of your coaching programs, what is the best method, Melissa?
Oh, yeah. Well, you can always come find me on LinkedIn. There's a little down in the featured section. You can even just hit the little application to get a consult call if you want to, take a look at what we have to offer. But you can also go to the Burnout to All Out website, burnouttoallout.co. You'll see our offerings. We've got our LinkedIn Method Academy, which is a 6-month program, teaches attraction marketing. We also have our Leadership Mastermind for digital CEOs, which is my passion project right now. And we also have an agency. So we do some done for you work, kind of higher end for some of our super busy entrepreneurs. Yeah.
Great. Lots of good things coming. Great. Okay. So just to wrap it up, my main takeaways are the following ones. Number one, lead by example. Whatever you do, lead by example. Practice what you preach. Take action, even if it's just a little tiny step, just take action, move. Then make calculated risks. Even if you're terrified, do it anyway. Sleep early and wake up early. And the last one I love that you said is get comfortable with being uncomfortable.
Yeah.
So you have any parting words or before we go our separate ways, Melissa?
Yeah, no, I think, my final comment just with the mission to burn out to all out is if you believe you can, you can.
Yes. Oh, great. Thank you so much for coming on the show, Melissa.
Yes.
What a pleasure it has been. And my friend at home, at work, wherever you are, thank you for watching. And I hope you're feeling as enlightened as I am and energized from talking with Melissa. And I will leave you with this. The power of your voice can change the world. Find it and use it. See you in the next video. Bye.
Yay. Awesome.
Yay.